Hi guys, Brain here, and welcome to my impressions of the Chucky chapter, which is definitely not the character we thought was coming when it came to the new PTB with the new killer. A lot of people, until the teaser came out yesterday, or well, at this point it'll be like 2 days ago, by the time this hits the YouTube, thought it was going to be either Predator or something from FNAF because, you know, Predator because we already negotiated with Fox for Xeno, so it kind of made sense, and FNAF because of the time release of the movie and that kind of being a highly speculated killer for a long time. But when we got the little Cursed Chucky kind of like, you know, shelf with all the killer knives and the stool, a lot of people were like, I think it's Chucky, and those people were correct. So you're here to hear my opinions of how I feel about Chucky. Also, there's a lot of cool stuff that happened here, like the Trickster changes, which we will talk about because those are something. The map reworks, which hey, I'm sure you've seen opinions about those, and I will tell you how I feel about those as well. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. So how do I feel about the good guy, good old Chucky? Chucky is not a character or franchise that I am too personally invested in. I've seen like the first movie and a half, and then I've seen like clips from the rest of them. But the cool thing about this is this character is incredibly well designed. This is the longest amount of time I have played a PTB. Usually I play a PTB for like 4 or 5 hours, call it a day. You know, even then with the Xenomorph PTB, I still only played that for like 5-6 hours, something like that. But this PTB I played for almost 8 hours because I ended up playing it on the killer side and on the survivor side, and I just kind of found myself not wanting to go back to life and not wanting to end the stream. In terms of Chucky on the killer side of things, they're a very like low barrier entry but high skill ceiling kind of character, which is, you know, typically, you know, a very, very enjoyable formula when it comes to the DVD formula. He is a mixture of a stealth and a chase killer. So he has this what is called the hidey ho mode, which gives him undetectable but also allows him to enter a lunge. He also has a secondary ability under that called Scamper, which allows him to slide over windows and under pallets, which gives him a second lunge, which is really cool. And the cool thing about this lunge is that it plays very, very nice with collision, so you can use it to slide off things. If I could, you know, summarize this character in one way that if I could summarize this character in one way to make it simple to understand for somebody who, you know, has not played the PTB or doesn't have access to the BTB, it is kind of like Hug Tech Blight, just with like the one rush, right? He has the one rush too if he does the scamper through something and then continues, but he essentially kind of plays like a fair Blight. And Blight is fair, it's just his allies that are terrible, which it's kind of, you know, interesting to see that kind of philosophy and design brought back with another killer. He does have a rush, but it is mostly fair, and we'll talk about why in instances where it's not soon. It's mostly fair. There's a lot of counterplay to it. If you notice he's doing it, you just, you know, like with a Hug Tech Blight, if you notice they're gonna like hug a loop tightly to try and get you down, you space out the loop or you leave the loop. There's a lot you can do. So there's a really, really cool shot and I hit, and I'll put it up in the B-roll up there. There's a path palette on Ormond that I'm chasing this Dwight at, and I go to fake one way, and I moon dash back around the other way, and I end up hitting him, and it's just like, this character has a lot of skill expression. There's a lot of cool stuff this character do, but it's also a lot of skill expression, so it's not like it's just easy access, something like Skull Merchant, where it's just all easy access to like its power and its injury. Like, this is stuff that like a skillful player will get their hands on this killer, and like, they'll feel good. They'll feel like they can do cool and neat things that circumvent the chase quickly, and it's not immediately available to somebody who just picks up the character trying to play them like every other killer. It is an incredibly well-designed killer. From the top to the bottom, like, the stealth is cool, but not the main point, but you can kind of play more to the stealth. But if you really want to be only a chase demon, you can kind of ignore the stealth and only be a chase demon. Like, it's just a perfect is a little early to say, right? But it's a near perfect killer design. Like, it really is. Like, it's a near perfect killer design. Like, there's nothing I really hate about this. The two things I do hate, or I will say that I'm kind of like not the biggest fan of, because I don't think I hate anything about this killer, to be honest with you. The first being that I also want to mention before we get into the things that I hate, this is the first third-person killer in the game. This is the first third-person killer to ever exist in the game. Every other killer in Dead by Daylight is a first-person perspective, but Chucky is third-person perspective. So it is the first killer in Dead by Daylight that is third-person perspective. So that's really interesting. That's a big first. So let's get into the few things I do actually dislike about this character. Unfortunately, Chucky is one of those characters that the hitbox under effective latency or lag does get kind of wonky. So I'm sure you've played against characters like certain rush killers, projectile killers. Huntress is probably the first one that came to mind. That if they're even slightly laggy, the hitbox gets super generous out of nowhere, and it's really obnoxious. Chucky is unfortunately one of those characters, so you got to be prepared for that on the survivor end of things. The second thing being that a mixture of his third-person camera and certain add-ons and there's a lot of them that give aura reading, really shut down like hover gamers, people that are going for flashlight saves or flashbangs. It very, very much shuts down flashlight save and flashbang. So it kind of depends how you feel about Lightborn. I'm one of those people that's like, Lightborn's kind of a silly perk because, you know, it's fine for people that have like photosensitivity issues and like don't want to deal with flashlights. That's totally fine. But from a gameplay perspective, it's stop throwing the game to have fun and go be sweaty and optimal instead. Is essentially what, you know, Lightborn is encouraging you to do. So the fact that Chucky has some, you know, between his third person and his aura add-ons that he has the ability to really, you know, snuff out savers is going to encourage sweatier gameplay and kind of guts a lot of fun gameplay on the survivor end of things. So obviously that is something I'm not a huge fan of. And lastly, and this is more of a personal thing, and it is an accessibility thing, I am somebody who gets fairly motion sick fairly easily. I've told you guys before that I can't really play Nurse for more than like a game or two without feeling motion sick because of like the zoom in and then her head shakes and then all that stuff. Like it makes me nauseous, so I can't play a Nurse game for more than one Nurse game because she just makes me motion sick. I do get kind of motion sick playing Chucky because while the character is our first third-person character, whenever they're picking somebody up and carrying them, they do slide back into first-person mode because the way, which is really smart and really cool the way they handle it, is that Chucky's whole lore is that he's a serial killer that gets, you know, through a freak accident, a bolt of lightning gets stuck inside a child's doll. So the way they went about, you know, having him actually able to, you know, carry and hook survivors since he's so small is that the ghost of the person, his spirit, appears and picks up the survivor, and then he goes back into the doll afterwards. So that's the way they handle that. But in that situation, you go from third person to first person when you become the ghost. And that switch of perspective over and over does kind of give me a little motion sickness. So despite how much I love this character, there is that barrier there that I do get kind of motion sick playing them. So, and it's not like the other situation with Nurse where I can run Shadowborn and kind of like, you know, help it a little bit, because Shadowborn doesn't affect Chucky. It only goes off in the first person mode, and it's the transition that's the problem, if that makes sense. It's the transition, not the actual field of view in the ghost mode. It's literally the transition that makes me kind of motion sick. So I don't know if you can, like, behavior, if you watch this, I don't know if you can like adjust that somehow, but it does kind of like, that isn't kind of an accessibility thing. Yeah, talking about Chucky in general, got that squared away. Let's talk about their perks. First is Hex 2 can play. This has been most infamously compared to Blast Mine for Killer, which is kind of a fair assessment. Anytime you are stunned or blinded by a survivor 2 times, if there's no Hex totem associated with this perk, a doll becomes a Hex, just like, you know, Plaything where the totem appears, or like, you know, Face the Darkness where a totem appears. So people who stun you get blinded for a second and a half. So it's kind of like Blast Mine, right? It doesn't it's not going to be winning you any games, but it's kind of like a haha got him, you know? And it can kind of, you know, with Blast Mine, it kind of delays a pop delivery, or may dissuade a pop delivery. This is kind of a similar effect too, where it's like, you know, if they get blinded, they may path poorly and you might get the down slightly quicker, but like, you know, for the most part, this is more just a fun perk. It is a cool perk, but it's mostly going to be a fun perk. I'd be surprised if this becomes like good in any way. Honestly, besides just, you know, another reason to like, you know, get Pentimento stacks. Yeah. But it's still fun design perk. Not every perk's meant to be good. Friends Till the End is probably the best perk to come out of the new teachables. This is another hook switching or obsession switching kind of perk, but this one's really, really good because when you hook a survivor that's not the obsession becomes exposed and you see their aura for 10 seconds. So you can go over, you know, you're not always going to be in a situation where you can, you know, take advantage of that exposed, but you know, you get the aura on that person, so you can go over there, a la barbecue, start a chase with them. And this is good because this perk's broken up in 2 parts, because when you actually get the obsession, whether through the exposed or through a normal chase, when you hook them, another survivor screams, reveals their position, and then they become the obsession. So you kind of have this constant flow of info going with this, which is really nice and kind of feeds into itself. This perk doesn't dwarf other info perks like ultimate weapon, lethal barbecue, but it's really nice and really dynamic. It's a very interesting perk, I think is what I'll say. It's a very, very interesting perk, and it is fun to use. So while it may not be like a top 3 info perk, it's still a pretty nice one, and it's pretty dynamic and interesting. And I think it's like really cool, and it opens up to a lot of synergy with stuff like furtive chase and stuff like that. Man, that's a weird sentence to say in 2023. Furtive chase, good with anything. Wow. Yeah, like there's some cool tandem perks you can run with this and stuff. I don't know. I think it's a very, very neatly designed perk. The last perk, batteries included, is when you're within 12 meters of a completed gen, you have 5% haste and lingers for 5 seconds after you were gone. I think this is a neat perk. It's a really cool concept. Like it's a good thought. In practice, you shouldn't be chasing around finished gens realistically, because you know, you should be kind of ambiently pressuring gens across the map in terms of a macro play sort of thing. So, like, while this is a cool effect and it's neat, it kind of encourages poor gameplay to get value out of it. So, take with that what you will. I did have somebody kind of on chat kind of bring up a good idea, is that you could potentially see batteries included on endgame builds, because, you know, all the gens are finished, so there's a lot of places to get your value out of. There's something to that. There's something to be said for that. So, might see that in the forecast coming for when that drops live. All right, getting into the Trickster changes. Okay, this is like this chapter is a really, really good chapter that's coming to the game. Trickster is not one of these things that you should be excited for, literally at all. Some things about the Trickster change. You know, while Trickster is already not the most interesting character in the world, both as and against, these changes do help him in a moderately good way, which is like, you know, he's 115 instead of 110 now. Cool. No recoil, probably the best change to come out of this. No recoil makes complete sense. Wonderful change, especially for you console gamers out there. Blade throw speed is increased. And there's a lot of, like, you know, nerfs that go into this as well to kind of balance this out. Like your laceration meter is up to 8 instead of 6. But the main thing that's coming, no pun intended, the main thing that's coming, of course, is that main event. You now get it at 6 blades instead of 30. Now the duration's down to 5, like halved from 10 seconds down to 5, and there's a whole lot of other like minor nerfs to it. But the idea that you are getting main event with only 6 blades means you are getting it quite literally every single chase. And when I played Trickster today, this was my experience. I was getting main event literally every single chase. So what would often happen is I would get somebody near injured, because, you know, I would hit the 6 blades, and then I'd go cool, and then go into my main event and just very, very quickly down the survivor. If I was in kind of an awkward situation, I would, you know, pelt them with the 6 knives, go all the way up to the 8 to injure, and then use my main event because I still had it. So I would wait for the speed boost to finish after injuring them, and then use the main event. But I had main event every single chase. And when you use this with like the Death Throws compilation, where you don't even have to like reload when main event ends, it's just the game on easy mode. We brought up like Skull Merchant earlier. It's like, hey, it's not as easy as Skull Merchant. This is like the Skull Merchant kind of design, where it's just like brain off, me just win for free. It is. This cannot go live. This cannot. It is just. I don't think the answer to this character doesn't seem fun to play as and against is to make them so turbo easy that like only one side is having fun. That is, I do not think that's the answer to this problem. So this should not go live. It should not. All right, made for this got its finally got its nerf, where it is only active in deep wounds right now. This change makes it more of a companion perk. If you're running it with something like Off the Record, Dead Hard, you're still going to get value. But even then, like, as soon as you are finished deep wounding, like, you get deep wounds, right? And if you get away from that chase and you mend, like, you know, it's gone now, right? Like, it kind of balances itself and like, well, now it's gone. So you don't even have that anymore. Like, It kind of does away with itself. And compared to how it used to be, I will take this. I will take this. I still liked my idea where Made for This stayed mostly the same, but it was like Fire Up where like you get the percentiles across each hook all the way to Death Hook. But I'll take this over the perk quite literally bottlenecking design. So yeah, it's more of a companion perk now, which is not a bad place to be, but just keep that in mind. All right, so lastly, the last thing we'll talk about is the map updates. The map updates leave a lot to be desired. It's kind of sad we're ending on like a sad note here, but this is at the end of the, this is the last thing that they adjusted. Mother's Dwelling and Temple are smaller, which is cool. That's kind of a thing that we've always wanted ever since those maps have been out. It's just they are just gargantuan for no reason. So it is good that they changed those to be smaller, but that's about where the map changes in terms of positivity ends. Mother's Dwelling still is very annoying in terms of loops. They said they were going to remove a lot of the junk from the loops, like the bushes and trees, to make them easier to loop, but they didn't really do that. I like barely noticed the difference. The God window is still there on Mother's Dwelling main building, so like I feel like that was kind of like the other big issue with that map, is that main building window was way too strong, but they just kind of like left that too. And similarly on Garden of Joy, they also didn't address the main issue, which was Garden of Joy's main building. They just put a breakable wall in a really odd place downstairs in that dining room, which, while, you know, potentially will make it harder to get more vaults out of that God window, it does make the other windows at the other side of the house even stronger. So like, you didn't fix it. And they also put a random breakable wall upstairs to cut off a vault that nobody ever used. Like, I literally today, I went back and said, why did they put this breakable wall here to block off this window? And I had people in chat going, I didn't even know that window was here. There are people telling me they didn't even know that window existed. They put a breakable wall to cut off access to it upstairs. Why? It's just like, they just didn't get what the problem with the map was. I will say that they did have seemingly removed the path tiles that connected Shack into the 2 jungle gyms into the parking lot loop. That seems to be like the only positive change about Garden of Joy that I noticed. The map is going to play out largely the same, if not slightly better for Survivor, which is, I'm going to say it, and this is going to come off, I'm going to try, I don't want to sound rude, but the map changes, the map balancing comes off as half-baked. It feels lazy. It feels like they didn't actually want to take a hard look at what was wrong with the maps and make it better. And what they ended up doing to it was just like the most like band-aid fix possible. But this time, unlike with a lot of the band-aid fixes that we see in the game, this just doesn't work. And in Guardians of Joy's case, potentially made it a worse map. Like, these maps needed more than a band-aid fix, and you kind of just like, you try to, it's like a kid you asked to clean their room and they just kind of kicked all the shit under the rug, right? Like, or like under their bed. They're just like, well, it's clean, right? Because I just shoved it all under my bed. That's essentially what these map updates were. They said it's clean now, and then you looked under the bed and you're like, you didn't clean anything. You just shoved it all under your bed, dude. So I want them to revisit this. I want them to look at this, look at the maps again and actually tackle the real issues here. Thank you for making the Red Forest maps, you know, not as big, but other than that, you didn't really tackle the main issues with these maps. So I would want to see you go back and actually address those. Other than that, to try and, you know, reel this around and on a positive note, Trickster can't go live with the main event changes. I want the Made for This change seems fine. I want the maps to be, you know, more looked at. But in terms of the main and most important aspect of the chapter, which is the new killer, very, very fun to play as, very high skill expression, not terrible to face, very fun to play against, and we love killers like that. We love killers like that, you know, we spawn in and we hear the Terrius and we're not like, oh crap, this is going to be a bad match. And we also love a character that we can spend time, you know, labbing and learning and getting cool shots, cool clips for Twitter, and you know, it's just nice. They did a really good job with Chucky specifically, so I cannot wait for this chapter to drop on the 28th. So yeah, what do you guys think of the PTB? Let me know down in the comments below. But other than that, that's gonna be it for today's video. I do upload daily though, so I will see you tomorrow. But if I do not, well, you know, I'll see you when I see you. Goodbye.